suggests two types of creativity. It is art and religion. These two types are complementary and interrelated. Therefore, an icon painting is a process of ascent from darkness to light. So material things ascend to their spiritual essence. That's why the process of iconography is related to liturgy. It is liturgical. An icon on the board is symbolical description of reality. That's why the teaching about an icon is the teaching about the image of God in man. So every step that we demonstrate on the board shows certain realities that have to be not only depicted on the board, but also to be realized in one's soul. Znamenie, or sign, is a transferring of contour sketch onto the board, and it is a scheme of future image. Symbolically, it is related with the principle of will, our personal will or the will of God. Besides its practical meaning, preserving the lines of the sketch under the layers of paint, graphia has its anthropological meaning. It is the second plane of the depth in the board. After the frame, there is a kovcheg or arc, and following that, the second depth is the depth of the edged lines of the sketch. We can compare these three depths with the body as a frame, soul as an arc or kovcheg, and the lines as the movement of the mind. Clay as an element in this step represents the material nature. We know that the first man was created from red clay. So clay represents our physical nature. In Hebrew language there are three words with the same root: Adam, Adom, Adama, which is accordingly translated as man, red, and earth or clay. We will apply clay at the areas where there will be gold, so clay has to be prepared, smoothed and polished until it looks like a red mirror. Gold is related with our noetic nature, or angelic world. We will be able to comprehend this symbol with our mind, while the clay is comprehended more with the senses of our heart. The method of gilding reminds us the story of God taking Adam in a special place, paradise, and inhaling in him the breath of his own, the living spirit of Adam. In the result, the human nature became spiritual. Our method of gilding is emulating the story. We're breathing on the surface of clay and applying the gold leaf on the place of breath. In this way, clay is fired, because gold represents the noetic energies or fire. Simultaneously, clay is unified with gold, and that represents two aspects of human nature: physical, clay, and noetic, gold. The symbolic meaning of this step, Roskrosh, is coming from the word of the name itself, its opening, or the revelation. This is a revelation of white light. The revelation of light comes through breaking of the white beam of light through the prism. The color, as a result of this breaking, is the symbol of life. In this process, the light is a vertical principle, as the color is a horizontal principle. So what we see is the action of the cross. We will be opening the colors in our icons using the special method. For all the colors of the journey are proceeding from the darkness to light, as the ascending to the Mount Tabor toward transfiguration. That's why in the beginning we take usually the colors of darker shades and coarser grained, while further in the process we'll be using more and more clear colors and finer grind of pigments. The next step, propis, or lines, is immediately related with the previous one. As we learned, Roskrosh, or first layers of colors, represents chaos, where the paints are hardly controlled. The next step of the process organizes the chaos, brings it to order. In this way, the lines represent the principle of law. We should know three types of chaos as well as three types of law. First is the chaos of pagan world, and so the law of life of pagan world. Then the chaos of the Old Testament, and the law of Moses that was received as the spiritual law. And the third type of chaos is the chaos of beauty. This type of chaos is not controlled by the law only, but it is capable to reach the grace. So according to this one, our Roskrosh supposed to be beautiful. Another aspect of the meaning of the lines touches the principle or concept of perspective. The second type of mind is the spiral-like. Projecting itself outwardly, it returns to the remembrance of itself, and so the straight lines binds inwardly in a search of center. This is a spiral-like motion. The third type of mind has the circle-like movement. The perfect symbol of this type of mind in the depiction of the icon is an image of an eye. An eye is a perfect sphere. The tradition says that angels are moving around God as the center, creating the sphere. In their motion, they contemplate the center, God. The contrast of highlights applied on a darker area of colors reveals the shape or form of the objects, such as folds or other parts of the icon, which is in the context of the words of the Bible, the God separated light from dark. So this kind of separation of light from dark is the task of the first highlight. As in the prophet of Isaiah, it says that God creates the darkness and forms the light. This is the task of an iconographer as well. The iconographer is forming the light on the icon. Through this work, the image is brought to the dimensional world. Floating symbolically represents a veil. Veil is necessary to hide, to obscure the first light. Before we will be able to work with the second light, the first light has to be closed or veiled. For instance, think of electric light. We know the difference in between electric light and sunlight. In order to see the sunlight, it doesn't help to increase the electric light. We need to turn it off, come out of the room and see the sunlight. So this transition is what the floating does in icon. Technically, we separate the highlight and the floating, but in iconology they are like two parallel lines. They go together. Second highlight is an opening of the inner light of man or anthropos. It is the division of light within light, in the context of scriptural words, "In thy light let us see the light." The task of the second light, therefore, is to reveal the light of soul itself. The method of work in the second highlight is quite different from that of the first one. The spherical surface or shapes of the first light now will have to be faceted. The faceting as that one in a diamond. The soul has to be ornated with the facets just as a diamond. An interesting association related to the diamond is that within it we can observe the colors of the rainbow. In the same image, the light breaks in the prism of our soul and creates the color. There is an appearance of a union of color and light, which creates the image of the cross, where the light is the vertical of the cross and the color is the horizontal line. The color here is the symbol of new inner life. It's the life in the New Testament. The task of the second floating is to cover the second interior light, because that light is not perfectly spiritual light yet. And so also the second floating prepares us for the opening of the next light. The task of the second floating is to cover the inner light of the soul. That light is not strictly spiritual light, and so the floating covering it opens an opportunity for the more spiritual, essentially spiritual light. The third light symbolizes the angelic celestial hierarchy. The first light reveals the shape or the form. The second light reveals the inner light. Now the meaning of the third light is motion. It is the motion of the angelic light. If the second light allows us to see ourselves, the third light leads us to the contemplation of God. The third light is angelic light. We know that angels surround God and constantly contemplate Him. Оживки are the enlivenings. They make alive all that experience that we passed before. Before оживки, we learned about 4 different types of light with 4 different qualities. The first one was the light of gesso, which has a symbolic meaning of the first day of creation, the light of the first day. The second light is the light of cosmos, the separation of the light from dark, the first light that goes over the dark colors of Roskresh. The third light is a separation of the light within light. It was expressed in the technique of the second highlight. And the fourth light was expressed in the third highlight of the process. It has a meaning of angelic or noetic light. But all of these 4 lights are regarded as created lights. Now, оживки are expressing the completely different concept according to its nature. It reveals the nature of uncreated light. The whole process of the transfiguration of lights, expressed symbolically in the process, reflects the ascetic idea of ascent. We are ascending to the true life, to the true light. Holy Fathers are teaching that before the resurrection of our soul, it has to undergo the transfiguration. The uncreated light, symbolically expressed through the strokes of the оживки, is that power that transforms our soul in expectation for the resurrection. The application of alifa symbolizes the firing of the icon. The linseed oil saturating the layers of tempera brings out the brightness of the layers, firing them from inside. We can contemplate the principle of light in two aspects. One is the light that allows us to see the things, like the source of light, and the second one is that light is like fire. The linseed oil, alifa, represent that second aspect of light. We should observe and understand the relationship of the process of iconography with the sacramental life of the Church. We can see two sacraments represented in the process. The one is when the icon is painted using the liquid paints and floating technique. It can represent the sacrament of baptism. The other one, when the alifa or oil is applied, represents the unction. In the sacrament of holy unction, sanctified oil applied on the parts of the body restores us in the gifts of the Holy Spirit, baptizing us according to the words of the Gospel in fire and spirit.